on prime time. We're at night. We've graduated. It's pretty amazing. It was essential to have it at night to show how important it is, writers, vis-a-vis the filmmaking process. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Manitou Fund, and the board of directors of the film festival. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're in for a great time. Included in tonight's panel is Celine's song, Past Lives, Josh Singer, Maestro, Tony McNamara, Poor Things, Jefferson, American Fiction, Dave Hemingson, The Holdovers, Arthur Harari, Anatomy of a Fall, and Samy, Burch, May, December. Before I bring them all out, and your moderator for the evening, the incomparable Ann Thompson, please, let's take a look at clips from the nominated films. Enjoy, and we'll be right back. Celine's song, Past Lives. Josh Singer, Maestro. Tony McNamara, Poor Things. Jefferson, American Fiction. Dave Hemingson, The Holdovers. Arthur Harari, Anatomy of a Fall. And Samy, Burch, May, December. And you're in incredible hands. Give a warm welcome to Ann Thompson, editor-at-large for IndieWire.
This is my favorite panel. I love this panel. It's the smartest people, right? And best movies of the year. And we're gonna have some fun. So 2 of this group of Oscar nominees adapted their screenplays. American Fiction, nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Adapted Screenplay, as well as Best Actor for Jeffrey Wright and Supporting Actor for Sterling K. Brown. Jefferson, television writer, debut director and screenwriter for this movie. He adapted Percival Everett's 2001 novel, Erasure. And this movie actually won the Toronto Film Festival People's Choice Award, which is a big deal. And it kind of meant that it was going to be on the awards track, and of course, it was. Poor Things, Tony McNamara rejoins the favorite director, Yorgos. You know, we don't have actual name tags here. Okay, so I'm going completely in my own order, so when I call on you, just wave or something. So he adapted with director Yorgos Lanthimos as his director again, Scottish writer Alistair Gray's 1992 novel. This movie has nabbed 11 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. And it focuses on Bella Baxter, played by Emma Stone, Best Actress nominee, who is whisked away from home to learn about the world by bumbling Lothario Duncan Wedderburn, played by Oscar nominee Mark Ruffalo. And we have 5 original screenplay Oscar nominees, and 2 are written by married writing partners. May, December, Samy Burch. She wrote this critique of acting in the tabloid culture of the 90s with husband Alex Mechanic on Spec, hoping to land representation. Her new manager got the project set up with Todd Haynes, who directed Natalie Portman as an actress studying her scandal-ridden subject, played by Julianne Moore. And Anatomy of a Fall, where is Arthur? There he is. So Arthur Harari and his wife, Justine Triet.
Not married.
What?
Not married.
Oh, sorry about that. You have 2 children together. Okay, all right. Whoops, okay. So you guys wrote this drama together about this successful novelist played by the great Sandra Hüller, who directs now, and she is in this courtroom drama where we don't know whether she's guilty or not, and we never find out. That's what I love about this movie. And then Alexander Payne, where is David Hemingson? Right there. Read a TV pilot. This is for the movie The Holdovers, about the East Coast boarding school milieu, and he just cold called David Hemingson out of the blue and asked him if he'd be interested in writing something set in this kind of world. And they got together, and The Holdovers is the result, with 5 Oscar nods and 37 million worldwide, and nominations for Best Actor Paul Giamatti and Best Supporting Actress Davine Joy Randolph. So Josh Singer, where's Josh? He's been on this panel before. He was here at the 31st Santa Barbara Film Festival for Spotlight, which won Best Picture, and it also won the Oscar for Original Screenplay with Tom McCarthy. He's back with the Leonard Bernstein movie Maestro, which he co-wrote with Bradley Cooper, who stars in it and is nominated for co-writing and for producing and acting. Landed Best Picture and Original Screenplay nominations and won the Best First-Time Director at the DGA, as did Jefferson. And she made Past Lives, which is an extraordinary movie incorporating some things from your real life, but lots of other things that you made up. And it stars Teo as her old Korean friend from her youth, and John Magaro as her American husband. At 94 on Metacritic, Past Lives is the best reviewed narrative film of 2023. All right, so we're going to go down the line and ask each of you should give me a short resume of how you became a screenwriter. And we're going to do this, in case you're wondering, in alphabetical order by your last name. So that means that Samy is the first one.
Perfect. Well, this is my first produced screenplay. I went to college for screenwriting, and I wrote a lot of specs alone for no one for a while. And then this was the one that eventually broke in and got to Todd Haynes and Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore miraculously. So this is kind of the beginning.
Artur.
Well, I'm not really a professional screenwriter. I'm a director first. So I wrote the screenplays from my 2 feature films, and I wrote 2 screenplays with Justine, Sibyl and Anatomy of a Fall. But I've been writing films since I was I don't know, young, because I wanted to make films. So that's it. In France. So it's a complete different world.
Dave?
Wow, okay. Let me think. I've had a long and checkered career. I started out, actually, I went to law school, and I ended up being an attorney, and I was an attorney for 3 years, 3 months, and 2 days. And I hated every minute of it, and so I kind of quit into nothing and sort of had 30 grand and decided I was going to eat as much top ramen and drive my Geostorm for as long as I had to. And I got lucky, and I got kind of launched into TV in the mid-90s and wrote a lot of television for a lot of different TV shows. And I wrote this pilot called Stonehaven about my personal experiences growing up in New England with my mom and my uncle and my dad in the school. And Alexander Payne got a hold of it and read it, and this is my first produced screenplay after 28 years of writing TV.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Cord, you made a similar trajectory.
Well, I was never a lawyer. Oh, okay. I thought that's much to my father's dismay. No, I was a journalist right after college for about 8 or 9 years in various capacities. I started as a music journalist, and then I was a White House reporter for about 1.5 years when Obama was first in office. I wrote about I was just kind of a generalist, freelance journalist in New York City for a while. And then in 2014, a guy reached out to me and said that he liked my journalism and asked if I wanted to come write for his TV show. And I had always been interested in screenwriting, but I didn't know anybody in that world. I didn't know how to break in, and so it seemed like, yeah, sure, let's try it out. And so I joined his TV show, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with writing for television. I fell in love with writing fiction and the collaboration of it. And so I worked on a bunch of different TV shows for, 6 years. I found this novel, Erasure, that I adapted in December of 2020. So I spent 6 years working on various shows. I worked on Master of None and Succession and Watchmen and The Good Place and a few other things. And it felt like I was excited by all those things, and I was very proud of my work in television, but I was always sort of hoping that one day I might get to try to make something that was my own and not just work in somebody else's writer's room. And so when I found this novel in 2020, this was my first foray into film.
Tony?
I'm Australian, so I grew up in a small country town in Australia where when someone said they were going to theatre, it meant they were getting a knee operation. But eventually I had an ill-fated journey into the money market arena where I was so bad at it, I probably could have run Lehman Brothers. But what it did, it brought me to London, and so I saw a lot of plays, and I was just blown away by plays, and I kind of just went, I want to do that. So I started doing that quite badly for quite a long time. And then eventually someone put my play on, and then I had a career as a playwright for a while. And then my friends were doing TV, and they seemed to be having fun. So I did that, started doing TV, and then slowly started writing features and working for Yorgos. And so yeah, that's kind of what brought me to this lovely stage.
Josh?
I thought I had gone on a non-traditional path, but it sounds like it's actually a pretty traditional path. I worked in consulting. I went to law school and then asked my father if I could go join the circus. And I took a sublet out from from a woman who's dating and later married Lou Wells, who was the line producer on The West Wing. And Lou was very kind, and I was speccing a West Wing. And he offered to read it, and he liked it, and he passed it on to John, who hired me onto that show. And that was how I got into the business. And then I worked in TV for a while, and then got very lucky, and I've written a couple features.
Yeah. Celine?
I went to school for psychology, and I minored in philosophy, and I thought maybe I'll be a therapist. That's what I thought. But then I decided not to do that. I was a playwright for over 10 years. I went to school for it, and I was doing off-Broadway plays in New York City for a long time. And then I staffed on a TV show, Wheel of Time. Anybody watch the show? Guys, Wheel of Time, come on. Fantasy show. So I staffed on a Wheel of Time, and then I think that while I was, staffing on it, I started writing past lives. And once I finished, I showed it to A24, and then they decided to do the movie.
So Samy, tell us how you collaborated with your husband,
My husband.
Alex.
Well, we outlined the story together, really with note cards on our wall behind our couch in our old apartment, and then I wrote the the screenplay. But we have a history of making short films together, so it was just, it was a very natural, organic process. It kind of just came, the basic premise in a conversation, and then, yeah, it was wonderful. And then we got married later. If we're really tracking marriage,
You weren't married when you wrote this.
we were unmarried and living together.
But
So what was this inspired, May December, by the Mary Kay Letourneau case?
I mean, it's definitely loosely inspired. I really, right from the beginning, we wanted to make sure it was not a retelling, that it was a fictional story, and I think that's essential, really, to what the movie is. So, you know, I think there are certain things that are really familiar with these tabloid stories, because if anyone was alive in all of the 90s, I don't think we had a choice. I'm pretty sure, you know, Heidi Fleiss, O.J. Simpson, Tonya Harding, I mean, it's like the Mount Rushmore was against our will, I think. So I think that whole thing has really interested me, because I really was a child in that era, and I absorbed so much, and kind of where we are right now with true crime. And, you know, it seems like we're having a moment of resurrecting that, retelling these stories one by one. And I think it's interesting that we're doing that.
Absolutely. So how did you end up getting notes from Will Ferrell?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, the first producers that signed on to the script, when it really just went out, just, you know, with me and without, it was just a script in the pile, was Jessica Elbaum and Will Ferrell, their company, Gloria Sanchez. And they were fantastic. They're just wonderful. And it was them, I did a pass with their notes, and then it was them that got it to Natalie Portman.
So Natalie Portman was the one who really drove the movie to get made and to find Todd Haynes and all that?
Well, I mean, I think both groups, it was Gloria Sanchez and Natalie's company, but really early on, I mean, Natalie read it, she said, I want to play this part and be a producer on it. And then, thankfully, I didn't have to wait this out, but she emailed Todd Haynes herself, like, I want to do this, and are you interested? And I luckily, didn't have to wait for that answer. I just got a phone call when he said he did, and this was all in the pandemic, so it was very surreal to not have met any of these people, and then be like, oh, sounds great. Oh, I'm still in my apartment. That's interesting, but yeah.
So you're balancing a very tricky tone dance between humor and heartbreak in this movie. Talk about the challenges of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about that calibration of where the humor is coming from. You know, I think there is a very dark, sort of sinister tone, but it's intertwined with something that I see as very humane. And always kind of weighing those things and making sure that especially Charles Melton's character, Joe, you know, he was very protected from the beginning, even within the structure. You know, there are a lot of the moments we get with him alone are him like in his den watching this old house and working on his hobbies. And I think that allows some of the satire, the commentary on this television actress coming to town looking for the truth. You know, it allows it to balance.
Thank you. So Artur, how did you're writing this during the pandemic also, like sort of holed up with Justine in the house with 2 kids?
Yeah. What is funny about that? I don't know. No, yeah, we had the idea, I think, 1 or 2 weeks before the first lockdown, and we started working on it really when we didn't have any right to go out, and we were lucky to be in a house and not in, because we live in Paris, and a lot of people went crazy in Paris in the small flats, but we had the chance to be in a house with a little garden that somebody had lent us, whatever. So yeah, we wrote day and night. We had, because it's the advantage of writing with somebody you live with, is that you can work a lot, sometimes too much, because there's no boundaries between private life and work. And with the kids, on top of that, was an intense period. Yeah.
What was the original nugget of an idea for that, for Anatomy of a Fall? The original central idea.
Yeah, I think it was the couple, the son and the mother, the relationship between the son and mother, because we had another idea and we were hesitating between this one and Anatomy of a Fall, and it was the same relationship that was at the basis of this other story. So the idea that a kid progressively understands that he doesn't really know who his mother is, and that tries to figure out what is her real personality.
So while you were writing this, and there's a part of the movie is about a husband and wife who fight a lot. Did you and your partner fight while you were writing the screenplay?
You're really asking this question? I'm offended. No, of course. I mean, who doesn't fight with his partner? No, we spent more time not fighting than fighting. Otherwise, there would be no screenplay. But no, it was, and also because Justine is very demanding, and because we'd written her. Why everybody's laughing? I don't understand. This is American humor or what? No, the previous film Justine made, Sibyl, we wrote it together also, but it was very short. The time we spent on the writing was very short, also because we knew when, she knew when she had to shoot the film because of the actress. And we felt a bit frustrated about the screenplay, because I thought it needed more time. And when we started working on Anatomy of a Fall, Justine really decided that it will take some time. If we needed time to write, it could be very long, and she was obsessed with the writing, and so it was at the same time difficult sometimes, but very exciting, because it's as if the film was taking us further and further. We didn't expect it to be so so intense and so demanding.
So one of the cool things about it, though, as I mentioned earlier, is that you leave it open. And was that, why was it so important to leave the guilt of the central character open?
Because it was the whole film is seen. We're outside of Sandra. We're looking at her. We're listening to her. We are wondering who she is and what she did and why she had this relationship with her husband, and because we are not here when it happens, we will never be here until the end, and the kid will never know. So unless there's an actual proof, and there's not, it's all a question of not knowing, and it's very similar to a lot of situations in life. You're outside. It's not that the truth doesn't exist, it's that you will never get it, or you have to decide whether you believe or you don't believe. And it seemed interesting that for once in a crime thriller or courtroom drama, the truth would not come because the writers decided to give it to the audience. It's like when you don't have an element, you have to deal with the fact that you don't have it. And I felt very, very close I feel it very close to what we experienced watching May, December. It's not the same, I mean, it's not killing someone or not killing someone, but it's, you cannot completely put words on what is this relationship or this character, the character played by Julianne Moore. And so you're left with your thoughts and your feelings.
Thank you. So Dave, when Alexander Payne first approached you with that, what did he do? Did he phone call you?
Yeah, it was a cold call. I'd written this pilot, Stonehaven, that I loved, and it was very kind of autobiographical and dear to me. And my manager, who has the best taste in the worst bedside manner in Hollywood, read it, and he was like, oh, this is really resonant, it's personal, you clearly poured a lot of yourself into it, this is lovely, and it's kind of elegiac, but it's also kind of funny, and no one will ever make this. I mean, this is way too, like a rarefied prep, it was 1980s. Nobody's gonna make a TV show about a prep school in 1980. But a great writing sample. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's just my heart and soul, but that's fine. Yeah, I put that aside, put it in a drawer, went off and did some more television. And then what happened was, and the reason he's still my manager, is he gave it to another client who had gone to film school with Alexander. Alexander read it and really loved it and called me up out of the blue. And I was like on the stuck in traffic on the 405, as you often are here in Los Angeles, and Santa Barbara. But you know, long story short, I thought I was being pranked. I mean, I got a buddy of mine, Bob, who likes to call me up and say things like, one about 8 years ago called me up and said, David Hemingson, Francis Ford Coppola. And I was like, oh, okay. And I totally bought it and was like, oh, yeah, never thought I'd hear from you. Well, I think you're very talented and I'd like to talk to you about a project. And I'm like, oh my God, well, that's fantastic. And then he's like, well, you're an idiot. Of course it's not Coppola. Why would he call you? What's wrong? You see, we're comedy writers. We have fun. So he's like, I want to get a beer. So I thought I was being set up again. And I almost kind of told the caller to F off, and then I looked down at, thank God I looked at the area code, it was an Omaha area code, and I'm a huge Alexander Payne fan, and I'm like, this could actually be Alexander Payne. And it turned out it was. And he said he had this idea about this kind of odiferous, kind of ocularly challenged professor stuck at a prep school over Christmas with these kids, and he'd read Stonehaven, and he's like, I really love this pilot. And I said, oh, fantastic. And I thought he was gonna make my pilot. I said, I wanna make your pilot. I don't wanna make it. I'm like, okay. Dream is born, dream dies, immediately. Immediately. And then he's like, but would you write this movie for me? And I immediately signed up, not knowing anything other than I was absolutely never going to say no to Alexander Payne, because I was a huge fan. And so began that kind of journey toward the movie.
So did you look at the 1935 Marcel Pagnol movie, Mare Luce?
I try to avoid that because I didn't want to be biased or prejudiced by the premise, because it was such a broad premise. I thought to myself, you know what? I just want to run with this and use my personal experience. But giving that character the disabilities that Alexander wanted, specifically the wandering eye, you know, and the kind of trimethylamine, the sort of fish smell, and I added the sweaty palms. I'm very proud of the sweaty palms. You know, and various other, you know, the hemorrhoids and that's me too. I'm the hemorrhoid guy. You know, so I was like, I'll add this stuff in. So I knew that he was a man who was on the outside, you know. And I love this idea of a man on the outside and the idea that I was going to tell this love story, because it is a love story in my mind, about these three broken people who kind of come together and kind of heal each other, you know, in the season of miracles. So I kind of I had the log line, and I had no interest in knowing anything else, really, about the movie.
And you introduced the character of the grieving cook.
Mary? Yeah. Yeah. No, Mary was honestly, the emotional matrix of Mary is my mom, who I was very close to, and I lost too soon. And I wanted this maternal energy in the film because I thought it was really important. My mom was a nurse for 42 years, and she'd come home, she'd sit on the end of my bed and always tell me to kind of be kind to people, because she saw people in the ICU who were in extremis, and she said, you know, everyone's going through something you can't understand, and if you can be kind to people, maybe there can be some healing, and then you're stronger kind of in the broken places. So I had this sort of maternal energy that I wanted to express, and I looked at the reality of my school experience, 6 years in prep school, and I thought, you know, and I come from a lower middle class background. My mom's brothers were janitors at Wesleyan and at the courthouse in Middletown, Connecticut. So I knew that most of the kids, when I was growing up, the kids whose older brothers and uncles were going to Vietnam, because I'm too young to have gone to Vietnam. We're mostly black kids and poor kids, you know. And I was like, okay, it makes sense that this woman would be here, and she's worked hard to put her son here. Like, my mom got up at 3:45 in the morning to like provide for me. And I wanted to honor that, but I also wanted to have it be historically accurate. So I kind of created Mary as a love letter to my mother and kind of the emotional reality that I experienced as a kid. And I kind of try to leave enough space, because that's not my lived experience, you know, and I wanted to honor that and respect that, so I wanted to give room for Devine to kind of interpret. I think that scene where she opens up that hat box and takes out Curtis's possessions was me sort of saying goodbye to my own mom in a way, in a weird way. So yeah, Mary was very important to me in anchoring the entire film, you know.
But you also had a relative who inspired Paul Giamatti, an uncle.
Yeah, the guy who raised me after my folks split. My folks split very acrimoniously in the late 60s. And my mother's sister, Anne, married a guy named Earl Cahill, who was a World War II vet. He'd fought on Saipan. And he's sort of bald with these jug-handled ears and these Buddy Holly glasses and kind of pot-bellied. But he was the coolest guy I'd ever met, like cooler by a factor of 10 than any Hollywood star I'd ever met. And he was just so tough. And he never let me feel sorry for myself. And he took an interest in me. I was kind of this young, kind of alienated, adrift kid. And he kind of stepped into my life, you know, and lines like in the movie, like, wake up kid, it's daylight in the swamp. That's how you used to wake me up when we go fishing or hunting in the winter, like 5 in the morning, banging pots, you know. For most people, life is like a hen house ladder, shitty and short. Like, that was what he said to me when he was talking about, like, don't lay down, make something of your life, you know. Sex is 99% friction, 1% goodwill, you know. Like, remember that when you're entering into relationships, you know? So I had all this installed in my hard drive with all this Baroque profanity when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And I'm like, what do I do with it? And I think sometimes it takes 27, 28 years to tell this truth, to tell this love story, and to honor the people that you love. And so that's why I wrote the movie, really.
Oh. So there's a scene at the end of the movie where the Paul Giamatti character and the young student, played by Dominic Sessa, who've been warring throughout, you know, but they come together in a way. A lot of people would have written that with a hug.
Never.
Their goodbye.
No hug.
Everybody's like,
yeah. No hug. Well, a couple of things there. 3 things, actually. One, we were making a 70s movie. Alexander always said, and Alexander is a genius. I want to stipulate to the fact that he is a genius. Let's all give it up for Alexander Payne, because he is a master. And the great news is the Venn diagram of kind of how we see the world is very similar. And in 1970, you wouldn't have had a hug between those two, that young man and that professor. It never would have happened. Secondly, I'm from New England. I was born in New Haven, Connecticut. Raised in, thank you, New Haven. Where are my Haven people? Over there, Elm City people. New Englanders don't do that, by and large. There's a sort of reserve to a lot of New Englanders. Once you kind of, they're like creme brulee. There's like a really hard candy shell, and you get through, and they're all kind of custardy underneath, but you have to get through it, you know? So they're not gonna be a demonstrative in that way, you know? And then thirdly, we just wanted it to be the truth of the moment, and the truth of that emotional dynamic with those 2 men who grew to love each other. You know, I think the line he says is like, you can do this. And, you know, that's what Paul says to Angus, and Angus says, I was just about to say the same thing to you. So they kind of had this parody, and I just wanted it to be real. And the fact that the kid just says, see ya, and runs away and doesn't even look back, to me felt like a 17-year-old boy, you know?
Thank you. So, Cord, what was the degree of difficulty in turning that book, Erasure, into a movie?
I mean, high. I think that, adapting anything is a degree of difficulty, right? Because people love this thing, and you love this thing. I wouldn't want to adapt anything that I didn't love, and so I really loved this book. It is, no piece of art has meant more to me before or since than this novel when I read it. And so there was a friend told me this horrific story that was on my mind when I started endeavoring to do this. And he said, have you ever heard of Boris Vian? And I said, no, I don't know who Boris Vian is. And Boris Vian was this French writer who wrote a novel called I Spit on Your Graves in the 1960s. And it sort of like the novel became this runaway success, and somebody adapted it. And on the night of the premiere, Boris Vian went to the premiere, and 10 minutes into the film, he stood up and started screaming at the screen about how much he hated it, and then he had a heart attack and died. That's a true story. And Boris Vian was 39 years old. And so he was like, hope you don't do that to Percival. And it was like, well, I hope I don't either. This is, that now is now my greatest fear. And so, yeah, I think that there is, anytime that you set out to sort of adapt something, you want to make sure we are all terrified that somebody's going to walk out of the theater saying, like, God, compared to the book, that was awful, right? I think that's everybody's feeling. And Percival Everett himself is kind of a sort of weird writer. He's got a lot of metatextual stuff. Erasure in particular has all these imagined conversations between sort of old artists and sort of like imagined conversations between artists and Hitler, and sort of it's digressive and discursive, which is great about novels, right? Like that's the great thing about novels, is that they meander and sort of I think that the novel is probably, I think the closest, is the art form that most closely resembles being in somebody's brain. I think that that's what's beautiful about novels. And so that's difficult, anytime you're thinking about it, that's difficult to then make cinematic, right? Especially a novel like Erasure. So yeah, it was a high degree of difficulty, but I loved it. This is the only thing that I've ever done in this business that I did purely because I was passionate about it. It wasn't because somebody said we got the rights to this book and we're looking for a writer to adapt this novel. It wasn't because somebody came to me and said we're looking for X story about these people. It was because I read this thing that moved me so deeply, and I felt like I want to help bring this into the world in a different way, and I just wrote it out of just pure passion and frenzy. It was it felt like a book written specifically for me. That's how I put it. I don't know if anybody's had that experience, but it's a wonderful experience. It felt like somebody sat down to write Cord Jefferson a novel. The sort of the lead character Monk, I empathized with him so deeply that it's sort of, the more that I read, it started to feel almost eerie. Like I don't like to talk in kind of woo-woo terms, but it did feel like very serendipitous when I found this novel.
I actually read this book, and it's different.
Yeah. It is. You mean different from the movie, or just different in general?
In general, but I've never read a book like this. It's insane, but you really made some changes.
Yeah. It is very different from the novel. I love the novel, but I think that the novel is much darker than the film is. I think that the novel, as I said, is, I think, more experimental than the film is. I would have loved to be digressive and discursive in some
2
ways.
hours.
Yeah, but I get 2 hours and not a lot of money and not a lot of time. And so I had to sort of make some cuts where I needed to make them. And so, yes, the skeleton is sort of the same, but there's a lot of adding and subtracting that I did with the book to make the film.
No, but what's wonderful about the movie is the way it combines this social satire with a very gentle and humane family drama that's very heartfelt.
Yeah, to me that is sort of the great thing about the book, and something that I sort of replicated in the film, which is that in this novel Erasure, it is offering both the problem and the solution, right? And so the problem, according to Monk, the protagonist, is that popular culture flattens black people's experiences and lives, and it's sort of very reductive when it comes to black stories and sort of what black life looks like. And so he's frustrated that all of this sort of like nuanced, complex work about black life is sort of tossed to the side to tell stories about slavery or gangs, or single mothers living in the projects. And at the same time, the book offers this incredibly compelling, complex, nuanced look at black life. And so sort of that is sort of like the sleight of hand of the film and the book, is that it is, juxtaposing, here's the problem and then here's the solution right here. And so sort of like more of this, and sort of move toward that direction. And I think that is the important, you know, I don't think you could have had one without the other in this film. I wouldn't have wanted to just make a purely satirical film. I wouldn't have wanted to make just a family dramedy. I think that both are sort of improved by the presence of the other.
Exactly, exactly. What gave you the confidence to direct for the first time?
The script. It was you know, I'd written for a long time. Like I said, I'd been a journalist even before I started screenwriting, and then I'd written for TV for several years. And so I feel comfortable writing. I feel comfortable with the written word. And so once the script was done, I knew that it was so deeply personal to me. There's so much of me in this movie. And I knew that to give it away to a different director would feel like giving away a limb or like a child. And so I knew that I had to direct it just because it would have, you know, I was so ready for that conversation where I sent it in and somebody was like, this is great, let's see what Spike Lee is doing. You know, that's like every conversation in Hollywood if you don't advocate for yourself. And so I was like, this is a package deal. Like, if you like the script, then I have to come along with it. And what gave me the confidence was that even, you know, I didn't know anything about lights, for instance. I didn't know anything about camera lenses. But what gave me the confidence was going in every day and saying, okay, I don't know, I may be out of my depth when it comes to lenses, but I know every scene and every character on like a fundamental level. Like, I know that story in my bones. I know who these people are, and I know what we need to accomplish with this story. And so that's what gave me the confidence to go onto set every day and say, like, okay, I don't know what we're doing with the camera, but I know that, for instance, Monk is isolated here, and he feels lonely, and sort of like, and so what can we do with the camera to enhance his isolation, right? To sort of like get at the idea that he's isolated. What can we do with the lights to, you know, help us understand Monk's emotional space here? Sort of what, like, all of those decisions came from me feeling like I really trusted the script and just sort of knew it like the back of my hand.
Thank you. So Tony, Yorgos Lanthimos loved the book that you were adapting by Alistair Gray, and he got the rights a while ago. You came in after The Favorite?
Yeah, we'd been working on The Favorite. We hadn't shot it yet, but he told me about it earlier, because when I met him, he'd only made Dogtooth and Alps, his Greek films. He hadn't made an English language film yet. But at the time, he said, I wanted to do this book, but it's so weird, no one will give me any money. And then he had made Lobster, and then he'd got the rights, and he said, someone will give me some money, do you want to read it?
So you focused on one aspect of this book, which was Bella Baxter.
Yeah, the book is kind of wild, and when I first read it, I've never adapted a book before, and when I first read it, I was like, well, this certainly shouldn't be it. Because the one about the baby's brain in the woman's head. But it's a great book, and a lot of it's about Scottish nationalism, which isn't in the movie. But Bella's character and the premise was there, but the way they told this, the way Alistair told the story was the men tell her story through letters, and you kind of understand her through that, but you're never in her experience with her. But the premise was great, and it felt like a real opportunity to kind of go on the journey with her, and kind of like, and it gave us the opportunity that, because it wasn't sort of there, that we had some tentpoles about the premise and certain relationships, and then we could kind of create a lot of it in the same way you're saying. It's like you have to kind of let go of the book and create a piece of cinema that sort of has a relationship with the book, but is its own object, and that's kind of what, I was trying to do. But yeah, what the main thing was just be in Bella's story the whole time, because that was what was exciting. For me, it was like, here's this person who's got no fingerprints of society on her or childhood, and so she has no shame, and she just greets experience with adventure and optimism in this really blithe, interesting way, as well as we could tell this satire about this weird inherent thing in humans which we seem to want to control each other, particularly men with women. And so it seemed like this great kind of wild movie that was a huge challenge. And I think Yorgos and I were like, even at the start, he goes, I don't know if we can make it work. But we kind of just kept going and tried.
Well, you pursued a very fantastical approach.
Yeah, from the start, he was like, it's a fantasy. And then for me, it was like trying to bring all the elements of the satire and the coming of age and how to tell that this world it's period, but it's also not real. It's got chicken dogs and people burping giant bubbles and we didn't really have, he's sort of interesting because he's very intuitive. He didn't know what it looked like for a long time, so he couldn't really tell me what it looked like. And then eventually he kind of started to kind of get what he thought it would be after we'd done a few drafts. But yeah, it was always going to be a fantastical world and a fantasy and something that wasn't literal, but it was really sort of joyous, but it was also dark and comic and was just really like at base about this wonderful character kind of living in a way none of us live.
It has this feeling of being no holds barred.
Yeah, I think for me as a writer and him, I think, and one of the joys of working with him is there are no limits. And the joy of working with a director with Final Cut is he sort of wants you to go as far as you can go. And he really challenges you to be everything you can be. And one of the fun things about working for him is he's sort of the opposite of what everyone would think. He's very freeing. He's very like, you've got the same, he likes people of the same sensibility, and him and I get on extremely well and understood each other very quickly. And he likes to say we sort of don't really use language. It's a lot of Greek and Australian just sitting there not really saying anything for a long time. And somehow at the end I go, well, maybe we could do this. And he goes, yeah, try it. So it's not very, it's sort of, our wives are always like, it's weirdly unintense, but we get each other. So, and then, I just bring him what I think it is, and then he'll kind of shape, which he does with every department. He kind of goes, well, you're a designer, go design and I'll see what it looks like. And then he kind of develops his vision for it as he goes and really hones it really meticulously as we kind of get towards the end.
Where did the Wedderburn character come from? It is so deliciously funny.
Well, he's in the book, but I think for me it was just an amalgam of, I was seeing my friends go out with idiots, and my wife would tell me these amazing stories of how many idiots she went out with, and just the incredible variations of an idiocy and control, but also she would say to me, but I also was like sort of into it. And so he was sort of going to be this great cad, so he was a great trope, but he was also a guy who you could unpick because he would never understand why she didn't understand the rules. And so he's always trying to get traction on her and he just couldn't get it, and it kind of would send him fucking crazy. And then Mark came in and just took it up like a notch, big time. So yeah, I mean, he was just they were the funnest scenes to write between those two, and the funnest scenes kind of in rehearsal to watch.
Exactly, thank you. So Josh, you've got a saga to tell us a little bit here. You went through 10 years and 3 directors.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to say it. Isn't that how it's done? I mean, every movie dies 1,000 deaths. Although apparently not some of the ones here, which sound really smooth. But ours was not. It's actually 15 years ago that Fred Byrne and Amy Durning approached the Bernstein family and got the rights, and then and then got Marty Scorsese interested. And it's funny, I was at this really kind of dark movie moment. My very first produced movie had premiered at Toronto. You did my very first Q&A for that movie, The Fifth Estate. Which was you were very
didn't go that well.
Yeah, no, you were kinder than the critics were, despite Bill Condon's wonderful efforts. And that same moment that movie got sort of kicked around, I had this other movie about the Catholic Church and journalists that had 2 big stars attached, and they fell out the same weekend that Fifth Estate was destroyed by the critics. And I thought my career was over. And the only thing I had was that I had maybe a meeting with Martin Scorsese lined up to talk about Leonard Bernstein. And that was like my lifeline. And so I like prepped and prepped and prepped and prepped and prepped for that meeting. And I sat with Marty for a wonderful hour. I mean, you know, an hour with Marty Scorsese is just about the best thing in the world. And after that, we sort of got going. And it took a long time. You know, I sort of wandered in the desert, did a ton of research, and wrote, you know, what would be a pretty typical great man of history movie. I was younger and more foolish, as you'll recall. It never quite congealed. Marty read it and was busy doing other things. I slipped it to Steven Spielberg, who I just worked on the Post with, and Steven really liked it. And Steven said, well, why don't we kick this around? I'm supposed to do West Side Story, but if the Robbins estate doesn't let me do the dancing the way I want, or whatever the issue was of the day, he said, maybe I'll do this. And so we kicked it around for about 6 months. At the end of that process, we held a read-through, and Bradley heard about it, and Bradley had always wanted to play a conductor, and so we slipped the script to him. And for like 24 hours, I had Bradley starring in a movie directed by Steven Spielberg, which was pretty exciting. And Steven at that point was like, you know what, I really got to do West Side Story, but Bradley said, you know what, I just created this movie, Star is Born, and, you know, why don't you take a look at it, because it wasn't out in the theaters yet, and if you guys like it, you know, maybe you'll let me direct. And we all went to see Star is Born. This is a very long story. I was 10 years, I'm sorry. But we all went to see Star is Born, and, you know, Steven said within 10 minutes, was like, Bradley, you should do this. And then I started to hear about how there was going to be a page 1 rewrite, which are 3 words a writer never wants to hear. And because normally after that it's, and we're getting rid of the writer. But fortunately, Bradley said, hey, you've done a lot of research, and you seem to know a tune or two by Leonard Bernstein. Would you like to come on board? And that was 5.5 years ago.
So he was the one who really figured out the focus on the marriage.
He became, so Bradley is a little obsessive. He tends to go very deep. I mean, it's funny because I've heard this word batted around the internet, try hard, which to me is just like, it's the craziest word in the world. I mean, maybe I'm just of a different generation, but like that to me is like, yeah, Protestant work ethic. Like that's a good thing, right? I don't think there's a single person on this panel who's not a try hard. I'd have a hard time believing that. I don't know, but Bradley goes deep. He works harder than just about anyone I know. And like, you know, you're gonna write a script with Bradley Cooper. It's a little terrifying because he's a big movie star. Like, is he actually gonna write? And it turns out, yes. And not only that, he's gonna do all the research. And I'm somebody who loves doing research, and I was struggling to keep up, which was crazy. And he became very, very focused on this book, The Private World of Leonard Bernstein, which was Lenny and Felicia at 50. They were off on this retreat in Italy, and a reporter had gone with them, and really had very much gotten underneath who they were and the struggles in their marriage. And not only did we have the book, but we had tapes, like tons and tons of tapes that the reporter had literally, this guy, John Gruen, had literally taped them all summer. And the Bernstein archive had those tapes, and Bradley became obsessed and would be like, did you hear this one where this happened? I'm like, no, Bradley, I have a kid at home. Like, I wasn't listening to tapes, you know, last night all night, you know, until 3 in the morning. But he was just in there, and those tapes, he was like, this is the story. This marriage is fascinating, and it's universal, and it's about the struggle to have a family, you know, when you've got other needs and desires, which frankly is everyone, right? And so he was like, what if that's the A story? And then Lenny's achievements are sort of wrapped around that, along with his incredible music. And that was sort of what we did.
So did you just pass the script back and forth and change each other? And he had the last word.
Well, you know, I mean, it is Bradley Cooper. You know, it was very similar actually in my collaboration with Tom McCarthy on Spotlight, where like we'd talk through ideas. We'd say, you write that scene, I'll take that scene. We'd send them back and forth and play with them. And then the thing we did with, which I'd never done, is we read the stories out loud to each other. We read the script out loud to each other like every 3-4 weeks. He'd generally read Lenny and I'd generally read Felicia. I made a pretty good Felicia. Not nearly as good as the one who's actually in the movie. And we weren't acting, we were just listening to it. And I'd never had that experience because it let me like take a step back, you know, to hear it as opposed to trying to read it for the 700th time. And like, that's where I was able to really, I think we were both able to really sort of, you know, get a beat on what needed to be changed and addressed. And we did a lot of drafts. But yes, he had the final word.
Thank you. Celine, we're coming to you at last.
Hi.
So parts of this movie did come from your real life. The main scene. Talk about that nugget.
Well, so it's inspired by this actual moment in my own life where I found myself sitting in this bar in East Village, sitting between my childhood sweetheart who had come to visit me from Korea, who's now a friend, and my husband that I live with in New York City. And because I speak both of their languages, but they don't speak each other's language, I was actually translating between these two people who want to know more about each other, of course, but also they want to know more about me. Right? And I think that in translating between these two languages and cultures, it occurred to me in that room that it's sort of beyond that, where it felt like I have sort of become a bit of a portal or a bridge between two parts of my own self, and that I was translating between two parts of my own history. And I think this feeling was so strange and felt very extraordinary. And knowing that to everybody else at the bar, looking at the three of us, we're just a strange trio. And they have no idea what is going on here or how we ended up here. And I think I remember making an eye contact with somebody in the bar and seeing that they actually wanted to figure out what these three strange people, like a Korean guy, you know, me, you know, this white American guy, like, and I think that there was a way in which that it felt like I felt very watched. And I remember my reaction to that being, first of all, you're never gonna guess. You're never gonna guess. It's so wild, it's so strange. But also, the other thing was that, well, what if I actually took the time to tell you about it? What if I actually explained, I didn't just give you a quick answer of, yeah, they're basically this, but I was to actually tell them that this thing that I felt, which is this feeling of, you know, sitting in a bar, having a drink with my own past, the present, and the future in the same room. Yeah.
So that's what's so incredible about the script, really, is that you're laying out 3 time periods, and you're telling these stories and intertwining them very beautifully. But it must have been a challenge, and you were having to write in Korean and English and write a script that was comprehensible to everyone. When Final Cut Pro didn't have Korean in it.
Yeah, Final Cut Pro doesn't support the Korean alphabet. So I couldn't write it in what is known as the industry standard. And this was before Parasite, and the kind of conversation about subtitles was really there. So I just could feel that there was a very real barrier of this movie being a bilingual script. And I think that the other part of the bilingualism that I really felt was that, well, it's not incidental that the script has to be bilingual, because it is actually about trying to speak each other's language. So there is a scene in Past Lives where the American guy and the Korean guy, they meet each other for the first time. And the first thing that happens is, you know, they don't start punching each other and fighting each other because of normal love triangle. But what happens is these two people say hello to each other, but in the other guy's language. So the American guy says hello in Korean, in bad Korean, very bad. And then the Korean guy says hello back in English, bad English. And from there, it is really about the efforts that these characters are making to communicate. the actor who was playing the American husband, John Magaro, he asked me, he's like, I can get a little better at Korean. I think my Korean is really bad. And I remember telling him, well, no, this movie is not about somebody who's fluent in Korean. It's about somebody who is trying to learn Korean. So actually, you should be bad. And it is.
So what's so moving about the movie that we can all relate to, no matter who we are or whether we emigrated from another country or not, is just the road not taken. The idea that you could have been someone else and done something else, and how do you close that door or open that door again?
Well, yes, and I think the truth is that we can all feel connected, that even if you grew up in the same place forever, because we at least know what it's like to be not 12 anymore. None of us on this stage is 12, but all of us were 12 once, right? Once upon a time. And we all, I think, each have somebody in our lives who knew us when we were 12. My mom knew me when I was 12. And if I was to ask my mom, or if any of us asked my mom, what was Celine like when she was 12, right? For a moment there, I just know that the response will be something along the lines of, well, exactly the same, but totally different, right? And for her, she will even vividly see the 12-year-old girl in my face that is no longer 12. And I think that there is something about that contradiction that is at the heart of the movie, Heart of Past Lives, because what's going on is as we go through life, as people through vast amounts of time and space, we leave behind parts of ourselves and full selves in some of the places we've been and the times that we lived, and also, I think, primarily people who knew you then, right? So, and it's amazing to feel loved and understood by people who is still holding on to the little piece of self that you left behind with them, and they've been taking care of them, they've been loving them, right? And I think the movie really is about that feeling. And I think that it's like, yes, it's about roads not taken, but it's also about seeing the way that the roads that you did take, is where your future is going to be. And it doesn't mean that your past is not real. Your past is so real, but also there are moments where you have to say goodbye.
But you were able, on the basis of that script, to get A24 to give you that green light as a director, which is really not, you and Cord both were able to do that in a big way. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to my favorite part, actually, where we move on down the line, and I'll let you go first this time, Celine, and we'll move down the line. Just what is your writing process? It doesn't have to go on for a long time, but just what is your writing process?
I think it usually starts with thinking that maybe I'll work on that. So basically, after this moment in the bar for Past Lives, I think that I remember next morning waking up and being like, maybe I'll work on something about that. And then it sort of sits in what I call the maybe pile, for maybe I'll work on that pile, for a long time. And then I start to kind of work on it. Pretending like I'm not really working on it, but actually working on it. And I procrastinate for months. I don't procrastinate for a few hours, few days. No, I procrastinate for fully months. It's a big commitment to procrastinate that hard. And so I think for Past Lives, I was procrastinating for about 4 months. And the truth is that part of my procrastination process, which is a very important part of the process, is working on about 10 pages or something, and just staring at those 10 pages for 4 months. And the 10 pages I was working on is a scene near the end in the bar. So I was just working on that bar scene, the 10 pages or something, for 4 months, until I cracked that the beginning, which is that I realized that the scene from the bar should be pulled out and should be seen in a different perspective in the opening scene, and set up the mystery of the whole film. And I think that once I figured that out, I could write it in a month. Right? Yeah.
Josh.
I gotta follow that. That's a great story. I like that. That's pretty good. I have a similar, maybe I'll work on that, but mine, sadly for my wife and everyone around me involves me then, what about this story? And I literally will pitch them. This is what I think the story is. And then I'm like, and then I'll go away and I'll walk around and then I'll pitch them again. And I'm like, you know, by the 17th time my wife has heard the story, she's like, enough already. She's like, how about you just write it? And then I go into my procrastination, which, as I told you guys, is nerding out, which is I just research. I liked law school. I don't know if you did, but yeah, I'm a real geek and I love to go deep. And so and then again, my wife after, you know, through 2 or 3 weeks or months of this will say like, are you ever going to write the thing? And I stop with the, you know, and then, you know, so my wife is key clearly to my process.
Tony.
I have a series of big, giant, slightly embarrassing white pads that are about this large that I sort of carry around. And I just write bits of dialogue, bits of structure for long stretches of up to 40 minutes a day. Yeah. And my wife is also integral to mine, so because I often get excited, I come down and I start talking to her, and I'll tell her, and then she just stares back at me to the point I'm like, I think I was speaking English, but, and then I kind of go back up. I'm like, I think it's commentary, and then I mean, once I start writing, I never look back, I never read back. I just write 1 to 120, and then I kind of like start looking back then, because otherwise I'll just start thinking, and that's bad. Yeah, but it's just that. It's really kind of just lots of mess, and eventually I'll kind of like pull it into some kind of thing where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I know what the character is all about, and then I think I can do it. And once I can do it, I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's good, just get pages. Then I'm just page guy. I'm like, 6 pages today, great. Like I go to the mine or something, you know.
Cord?
Yeah, I wish I had a cooler process to share. I wake up at around 6 a.m. and I just start writing, and I don't leave bed. I don't put on clothes. I sit in bed all day and just I'm very methodical when I write. I don't leave a scene until the rule is don't leave a scene until you wouldn't be embarrassed to show it to somebody. And so I don't actually just sort of, I have friends who call it like a vomit draft. They just throw a bunch of stuff up and then they go back and sort of edit from there. But writing's, every time I'm doing it, I'm like, what a stupid life I've made for myself. I hate this. This is not, you chose this as a job. This is terrible. You could go be a lawyer. But it is just a very slow, like, okay, this scene is good, time to move on. This scene is good, time to move on. And so I just do that in bed all day. I wish I had like
that was cool process.
No, I wish
in bed all day.
I wish I had like a cork board or anything, but it's just waking up and writing, you know. That's I don't know. I wish.
Did that discipline come from television where you had to churn out so much?
No, it just comes from my own scattered brain. You know, it's something that I feel the need to do right now. And sort of, it's like I've just always, what it comes from is I mean, if you want the true answer, what it comes from is like an overbearing father figure who's always like, you should be working harder. And so that is truly, if you want what it comes from, it's like, why aren't you working right now? And so I'm up at 6 a.m. because it's like there's somewhere deep in my head, there's my father's voice going like, it's 6 a.m., you're burning daylight. What the hell are you doing? Why are you not up working, earning, making something of yourself? And so I'm currently, so right now I'm writing 3 movies, 2 TV shows, and 1 stage play. And it's like, and my process is like when I just write, and when it's annoying to me, then I move on to the next thing. And I write, and then that's annoying to me, and I move on to the next thing. So it's just like 6 final draft screens open at all times. And then when I get annoyed with one, I just move on to the next. And I do that until about 3 p.m. And then, yeah, I eat a salad. I stop working for the rest. That's my writing process. Eat a salad over the sink in my underwear.
David?
I get up around same time, and I go into my study, and I stand there in my bathrobe, and I look at the screen for a while, and after about 7 to 10 minutes, I shout, "What happens next?" And then I try to work on that for a while, and about 30 minutes after that, I stand in front of the open refrigerator saying, "The answer's not in here." And that's sort of, I toggle between those two experiences all day, but I think this procrastination impulse among writers is natural because it's very hard to focus, and willpower is a very difficult thing. But I'm kind of a structuralist, and so I kind of want to lay down some mile markers in the story if I can. And then if I lay down some mile markers, then I just start thinking about, what are the emotions? Who are these people? Why do I love them? What's their shameful secret? How much fun can I have with them? And I just kind of experiment with that. And then I go eat a salad over the sink at Cord's house. Thank you, by the way, for letting me in. But no, I think, it's kind of that process of just sort of trying to arrive at it. And then what I do is, I basically employ what I would call, my grandfather had this push lawnmower that he'd mow the lawn with, and it was this manual lawnmower. If anybody here ever had a relative or had one of these push lawnmowers, we kind of they're not. So, they didn't cut the grass very well. They just sort of did it. And so I kind of employ that method with a script. I'll just lay down the mile markers. I'll kind of get the emotional kind of matrix that I want to do, and I'll try to feel the characters as deeply as I can. Then I just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until I feel like it's serviceable and I need another salad at Cord's place. And that's what I do.
Arthur?
Well, it's difficult for me because I cannot talk about the process of writing this film without talking about Justine, and she's not there, so
It can be your ordinary process. This film doesn't have to be
nothing was ordinary with the writing of this film, so I want to talk about this process because it's more interesting than mine. Is that we had this kind of duet, and she was obsessed with the intensity of the writing and the fact that we should not live 1 minute of our day to anything else than the writing, and I was the one who was trying not to write, which is not the way I write usually when I make a film for myself, because I procrastinate and then when I dive I write. But there she wanted to take the material and make it come alive. So it was talking and talking and talking and missing, but we already tried this way, and so maybe we stop. No, we don't stop. We have to get this scene done, even if it's after midnight, because now the kids want to eat. So you write, and I'm going to make the cooking, and then I come back and I would say, but maybe we should stop now because the day is finished. And it was never finished, and this for weeks and months. So there's nothing normal about that. But it's to a point that I don't even remember how we wrote the film. Really. I remember the first important meeting we had in a cafe in Paris before the lockdown in 2020, and it was cool. It was a nice place, and we had this idea of this writer, the kid, the guy that falls and dies, and the trial, and we're very excited, and then it's a complete blur. I remember that it was very physical. not because we fought, but very hours and hours of work, discussions, me trying to stop, and her never letting me stop. So I never worked on something like that, so there was no process. I'm sorry.
Samy?
I'm realizing I need to get myself a wife. This is a
Exactly.
great asset. I mean, I have an idea, and I write notes in a notebook, and I eventually will outline like a slender kind of outline with, you know, basically 1 through 100 or whatever. You know, each one is a page, just kind of a blueprint, and I write character biographies for each of the main characters, and that's really essential to me because this sort of voices start to appear in writing those. And then what I really need is a deadline. That's essential. I need momentum. I will date 6 final drafts open. That gave me so much anxiety thinking of that. That's amazing. I will date my final draft to the day that I need to be done, whether or not that's just my own deadline, and I will not change that date. Whether it takes, you know, I write a lot in the middle of the night, I eat a lot of candy. You know, it's just, I need that kind of momentum. I'm found. It's not healthy, it's bad.
We're almost done. Don't be worried. Last question is what you're going to do next. And I want to know if my research is true, that several of you are doing Westerns, but let's find out. Celine, you're not doing a Western.
I'm not doing a Western.
But yours has been announced because it's for sale at the EFM in Berlin. The Materialists.
I am a Canadian, so I don't totally know what this means, but I think this is what it means. I would like to plead the fifth. I'm a Canadian, so I don't totally know what it means. I think it does mean that I do not need to share too much. But basically, it's just so early stages that I feel like, I don't know, I think this is the part of the process that's always a little bit scary because it's like, the movie's not made yet. And I've never been in a situation before where people are interested and there's attention on something that I'm making.
But you wrote the script already.
Yes, I wrote it actually in 2022 after I finished Past Lives. We finished post on it in like around May or something like that. And then we were gonna go to Sundance in 2023. And there was an amazing 6-month period. I mean, I said amazing. I don't know why I said amazing. It was not amazing. It's painful because I was waiting for Past Lives to come out. So I think that to cope with not amazing time that was, I wrote another script.
It is in the trays if you want to look it up. Okay, Josh?
Isn't that is such the toughest time, right? When you have something and it's done and it's like, what's gonna happen? It's terrifying.
Oh yeah, and then you're like, and people are like, I can't wait. And I'm like, you know who can't wait? I can't wait. Exactly. Like all your friends and all your friends and everybody who knows that I've been, you know, working on the movie, they're all just like, I can't wait to see it. And I'm like, you know who can't wait to show you? Me, the most. Anyway.
That's very funny. It is. It's really, yeah, that's what it is.
Drives you crazy.
It's crazy. This is a very challenging profession, at least, you know, if you've got a screw loose, as I do. What was the question?
What are you doing next?
Well, I guess mine's a little bit of a Western if you consider San Francisco is in the West. No, but so I've been working on we're trying to reboot Bullet, which is
that's cool.
a dangerous endeavor. But I've been watching a lot of car chases. So Mustangs and Dodge Challengers. And then I'm going to quickly run back to some true story, which is, you know, where I'm comfortable.
Tony?
I guess 2 things. So I'm doing a comedy with Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch. And I am doing a Western, sort of, I knew, which is it's Hawkline Monster, which is a book by Richard Brautigan, great American writer that Hal Ashby tried to make for a long time. And yeah, it's a sort of, a Western if you took a lot of LSD. it's a sort of gothic horror western. Is bonkers, but I'm doing that with Yorgos. I think we should not this year. Next year we should.
All right, we got one Western down. Cord, are you making a Western?
Yeah, that's one of the 6. It's I'm working on, well, more pressingly is I didn't think we were allowed to talk about this, but they just put it in the trades today. So I'm actually working with a former collaborator of Josh's in John Wells, who does a lot of TV stuff, and he and I are coming together to write the pilot for and then executive produce Scarlett Johansson's first TV show. So that's going to be, the writer's room is going to start for that next month, and it's going to be a limited series for Amazon. And then, I'm in the middle of, the next 2 films I want to work on are, Western about 2 brothers who go looking for their 3rd missing brother in the American Southwest. So it's kind of like a Western, contemporary Western noirish thing. And then I'm working on this erotic thriller. I had never seen Fatal Attraction until like 3 months ago. And everybody's like, what? Come on, I was young. All right, I don't know how old you think I am. I was not allowed to watch that movie when it first came out. And so I finally watched it, and I was like, this is incredible. And so, and then I rewatched Single White Female, and I just think Adrian Lynn's a genius. And so I'm working on an erotic thriller and a Western with similar themes to American Fiction. I know it sounds strange, but just through a completely different lens. I want to try something new.
Look forward. David?
I'm also writing a Western. But I'm writing with Alexander Payne, which is going to be pretty thrilling. So it's going to be set in Nebraska in 1886. And Alexander and I spent about 10 days traveling through Nebraska, like Willa Cather country, like in the frozen, incredibly cold winter, last winter, looking for the Sandhill crane migration, which we couldn't find. And then going to like the Homestead Museum in Kearney Arch, and we've sort of like, invested ourselves in telling this story, and we're really excited about it. And I'm also writing an Eastern, which is kind of it's kind of a, right? You didn't see that coming, did you? It's a noir set, it's a television project, it's a noir set in my hometown, New Haven, Connecticut. And I can't really talk about who's attached to it, but we've got an actor attached to it, and I'm really thrilled about this. It's a TV project, but it's a TV noir, which I'm just over the moon about. But I mean, the principal thing is me and AP writing this Western in Nebraska. Yeah.
Cool. Artur?
So I wrote a film that I'm gonna direct, hopefully at the end of this year or beginning of the next, and it's a body switch. That's what I can say, but a strange one, which is already strange, and it's not a comedy. Body switch, which is not a comedy. That's interesting. I don't know.
I love also the suspense of finding out who's writing a Western. That was really exciting. I'm not writing a Western. I have a project with Killer Films, who produced May December, that I don't think I can say too much about, but I wrote it, and we got a director who I really love, and we're in the kind of casting stage. And I'm also waiting to find out if the second movie I wrote that got made is going to be put in a vault for tax purposes. Thank you. Release Coyote versus Acme. Wile E. Coyote.
There's a whole movement here.
It's really heartening. It's really, and that you could consider that a Western, I guess. I mean, he does.
That's right, you already wrote one.
Yeah, he's in the desert, the Southwest, Wile E. Coyote. But it actually really is a legal thriller for children. It's Jesus. So, right? Release it. He sues the Acme Corporation, and we're really proud of the movie, and it's completely done, and we're going to find out what happens. But
They put it up for sale. Warner Brothers. This is the David Zaslav story of trying to make money by dumping movies, which seems to be his deal.
yeah, it's really disappointing. It's really, I think we're in it still. I think I'm just holding on to the smallest shred of hope. But yeah, it feels wrong to just. I think the possibility.
It's a case where enough people have seen it and said that it was good.
Yeah, and it
including
tested
Phil
really
Lord
well.
and Chris Miller, people like that who are respected.
Yes.
This isn't like a bad movie that they're dumping.
Yeah, I think it really. I don't know what I'm supposed to say or what I'm allowed to say, to be completely frank, but I think there was a regime change in big corporations like this, and it just if they write it off for tax purposes, it goes in the vault forever or is destroyed or something. I don't know. It's a lot of people's time and work that I hope that doesn't happen.
We are going out on a very down note here.
I'm so sorry. We'll have a big anvil fall and hit me on the...
Thank you all very much. This was wonderful.
Thank
you.
So much.